My lawyer's voice is calm, almost clinical, slicing through the tense quiet of the conference room. Across the polished table, his face is a mask of polite neutrality, but his eyes hold a sharp, unwavering focus that pins the man opposite him. My soon-to-be ex-husband. Given the nature of the evidence, my lawyer says, the words deliberate, heavy, and the clear intent to commercially damage my client by transmitting proprietary information to her direct competitors, the appropriate charge here is corporate espionage. The air leaves the room in a rush. It's not a gasp, more like the collective deflate of everything holding us together. His face, moments before smug, entitled, already planning his easy escape from the mess he made, goes slack. His eyes, the same eyes that once promised forever, widen in disbelief, then something cold and hollow. He opens his mouth, no sound comes out. His hands grip the edge of the table, knuckles white. He looks cornered, blindsided, like a child caught stealing cookies, suddenly told he's facing federal grand larceny charges. And then, with a low groan that seems to echo the shattering of his carefully constructed reality, he slumps forward, collapses right there at the table. Not a dramatic swoon, but a boneless crumple, hitting the wood with a dull thud. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Life before this moment felt solid, grounded. I had my business, built from the ground up with blood, sweat, and years of believing in something invisible until I could make it real. It was a good life. Busy, yes, but fulfilling. A comfortable house shared with the man I married. We had our routines, our quiet evenings, the easy rhythm of years spent side by side. He worked in a different field, something less volatile, more structured. He was supportive in his way. Proud, he said, of what I was building. He'd listen sometimes, when I'd vent about a tough client or a late-night pitch prep. It felt safe. Normal. My business was my passion project, scaled into a real, breathing entity. We designed niche software solutions. Not glamorous, but essential for the companies who needed them. We were innovative, agile. We were growing. Revenue was healthy, clients were happy, the team was motivated. I loved the buzz of it, the problem-solving, the feeling of creating value from thin air. My desire was simple: keep building, keep innovating, provide for my team, secure our future. A future I thought I was building with him. The first sign wasn't a crack, more like a subtle vibration in the foundation I hadn't noticed before. Things started slipping. Deals we were sure were closed suddenly fell apart. Clients who were on the verge of signing went silent, then resurfaced having gone with a competitor offering something eerily similar to our proposal, sometimes details so specific it chilled me. Pitches I'd honed for weeks felt flat, like the energy had been siphoned out of the room before I even began. My team looked to me for answers, and I had none. We doubled down, worked longer hours, refined our pitches, analyzed market trends until our eyes burned. We introduced new security protocols, thinking maybe it was a data leak from within. We hired consultants, tore apart our sales strategy, revamped our marketing. Nothing helped. The bleeding continued, slow but steady, an insidious drain on resources and morale. The initial shock curdled into frustration, then a gnawing fear. What were we missing? What was happening? The stress bled into my home life. I was preoccupied, distant, snapping at him over small things. He became different too. More inquisitive about my day, not in a supportive way, but probing. Asking about specific clients, specific deals, even specific lines of code we were developing. At first, I thought it was concern. He saw how stressed I was, how the business was struggling. But his questions felt less like comfort and more like information gathering. He'd linger when I was on video calls, pretending to be busy on his own laptop, but I'd catch his eye flicking to my screen. He'd ask about my schedule, who I was meeting with when. I dismissed it as spousal curiosity mixed with boredom, maybe a touch of mansplaining about how to fix it if I let him talk long enough. But the feeling persisted, a tiny, annoying fly buzzing at the edge of my perception. Then came the truly bizarre things. Small, almost imperceptible movements in rooms I used for important calls. A picture frame slightly crooked. A book on a shelf at a different angle. Objects I was certain I'd left one way were subtly shifted. My laptop charger, sometimes unplugged when I knew I'd left it plugged in. I started to feel watched. Not just by the competition, but in my own home. Paranoia began to coil in my stomach. It felt ridiculous. Who would be watching me? My husband? The thought was too absurd, too painful, to entertain for long. The crisis deepened. We lost our biggest potential client. The one that would have stabilized everything, given us breathing room, restored faith. They went with a competitor, a small, newer company. Their pitch deck, which I somehow obtained a redacted version of through industry channels, contained elements of our proprietary approach, nuances we hadn't publicly shared. It wasn't just similar, it felt informed. Like they'd been in the room with us. My blood ran cold. This wasn't bad luck. This was targeted. But how? The paranoia became unbearable. Sleep offered no escape. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, the feeling of unseen eyes on me. I started checking rooms before important calls, a ritual I hated myself for. Looking under furniture, behind books. It felt insane. My husband noticed, of course. He'd ask what I was doing. I'd mumble something about looking for a lost earring or a misplaced file. He'd watch me with an unreadable expression. Sometimes, I'd catch him looking at me when he thought I wasn't looking, a strange glint in his eye that made me shiver. He started suggesting I take a break, that maybe the business was too much for me. He'd offer to help manage things, a suggestion that felt less like support and more like a subtle encroachment. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I had a critical video call with a potential investor. The call was scheduled for 10 a.m. At 9:50, I went into the small study I used as my home office. I'd checked it earlier that morning, a quick, surface-level sweep. But the paranoia was particularly bad that day. I pulled the chair out from my desk. I knelt down just to check behind the leg, a spot I never looked. And there it was. Small, black, tucked neatly behind the desk leg, angled up perfectly to capture my face and the screen.
Atini camera.
My breath hitched. My heart hammered against my ribs. This couldn't be real. I reached for it, my hand shaking. It was cold, hard plastic. Functional. Not a child's toy. Dizziness washed over me. I scrambled up, looking around the room wildly now. Behind the bookshelf. In the corner, near the ceiling molding. Tucked amongst the plants on the windowsill. 1, 2, 3 more. Small, hidden broadcasting. In my home. In my office. Capturing every word, every facial expression, every slide I shared. The air felt thin, poisonous. My husband. It had to be him. He was the only other person with access to the house. The questions, the subtle shifts, the feeling of being watched. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. The betrayal hit me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just spying. This was sabotage. Using my own home, our shared space, to steal from me. To hurt my business. To hurt me. The man I shared my life with was actively working against me, feeding information to my competitors, dismantling what I had built, piece by painstaking piece. The ground beneath me didn't just shake. It gave way entirely. The investor call? I canceled it, stared at the cameras for a long time, touched them with trembling fingers. The polished surfaces felt alien, hostile. My mind raced. How long? How much had he seen? How much had he shared?
Who was he sharing it with? Competitors?
Someone paying him? Was this about money? Or something darker? Resentment? Control? I didn't confront him. Not yet. The shock was too profound, the implications too vast. Confrontation would just lead to lies, denial, manipulation. I needed proof. I needed help. My first call wasn't a friend or even family. It was to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but one specializing in corporate law, in intellectual property, in espionage. The word felt absurd coming out of my mouth, applying it to my husband, my home. but that's what it was. The lawyer listened patiently, his face grave as I recounted the business failures, the strange coincidences, the discovery of the cameras. He came to the house, documented everything with the forensic team. They found more. In the living room, where I sometimes took calls on the sofa. In the dining room, where I'd occasionally spread out blueprints or schematics. Small eyes hidden in plain sight, recording my professional life. They recovered the devices, extracted data, found evidence of transmission logs. It was all there. Undeniable. The turning point wasn't finding the cameras. It was the decision I made after. The moment I looked at the cold, dead eye of one of those devices and felt a resolve harden within me. I wouldn't crumble. I wouldn't just pack a bag and disappear. He thought he was destroying me, quietly, subtly, like a poison in my tea. But he had just handed me the weapon. He had created the evidence of his own crime. I decided I would use it. Every single bit of it. The legal process was a relentless grind. Filing for divorce was a formality, a necessary step. The real battle was the business end. My lawyer explained the options. A civil suit, potentially. But the evidence suggested something more. Commercial damage. Unauthorized access. Transmission of trade secrets. He talked about state and federal statutes.
Corporate espionage.
The stakes were incredibly high. Not just divorce court, dividing assets. This was criminal territory, or at least civil penalties so severe they could cripple a company or an individual. My husband hired lawyers. Expensive ones. They tried to paint me as paranoid, stressed, making wild accusations. They argued the cameras were for security, for monitoring the house while I was away. I wasn't away often and never for long enough to justify this. They tried to claim I was unstable, that the business problems were my fault, and I was looking for someone to blame. It was a vicious counterattack, designed to discredit me, to make the evidence look like a setup or a misunderstanding. Rising challenges became my daily reality. Balancing the legal fight with trying to keep my business afloat was an impossible tightrope walk. Morale among my team plummeted as rumors swirled. Clients were hesitant. Cash flow tightened. I had to lay off some employees, a decision that tore me apart. The company, my creation, was faltering, wounded by an enemy I had lived with. He played his part well at first. Confused, hurt, denied everything. Called me hysterical. Threatened me with defamation suits. Used our history, our shared memories like leverage, trying to pull me back into a world where I questioned my own sanity instead of his actions. He even tried to gaslight me about finding the cameras, suggesting I'd planted them myself in a stress-induced breakdown. It was a masterclass in manipulation, terrifying in its audacity. But I had the evidence. The digital logs, the recovered footage, thankfully, much of it had been stored on external servers before transmission, the forensic analysis.
My lawyer was a bulldog.
Quiet, but relentless. He built the case, piece by piece, connecting the dots between the stolen information and the timing of our lost deals, the competitor launches. The weight of it all was immense. Sleepless nights were filled with legal documents, strategy sessions, and the cold, hard reality of who the man I married truly was. The emotional toll was crushing. Grief for the lost marriage, anger at the betrayal, fear for my future and the future of my business. There were moments I wanted to give up, to walk away from the fight, let it all burn down. The thought of facing him, of airing this sickening betrayal in a courtroom, felt unbearable. But then I'd look at the photos of the hidden cameras the forensics team had given me. I'd remember the feeling of those unseen eyes on me, violating my space, stealing my livelihood. I'd think of my team, the people who had trusted me, who had lost their jobs because of his actions. And the resolve would harden again. He wouldn't get away with it. Not just divorce. Not just a slap on the wrist. He needed to face the full consequence of his actions. He committed a serious crime. And I would ensure he was held accountable for that. This led to the turning point, the decision to push for the corporate espionage charge. It wasn't just about winning the divorce or protecting my business financially anymore. It was about justice. About drawing a line in the sand. about showing that these actions have severe repercussions, repercussions he clearly hadn't considered. My lawyer agreed. The evidence was strong. The intent was clear. It was time to elevate the battlefield. Which brings us back to that room. The conference table. The quiet tension. His smug look, expecting a negotiation about assets, maybe alimony. Expecting me to be broken, tearful, eager to just make it go away. And my lawyer, delivering the precise, calculated blow he never saw coming. Corporate espionage. The words hang in the air, heavy with legal weight, with criminal implications, with potential prison time, massive fines, a ruined reputation far beyond our divorce. He collapses. It wasn't just about our marriage anymore. It wasn't even just about my business. He had crossed a line, a legal boundary with severe consequences that he, in his arrogance or ignorance, had completely overlooked. He thought he was just screwing over his wife and her company. He didn't realize he was committing a federal crime. He didn't realize the victim had the evidence and the will to use it with surgical precision. The betrayal was deep, but my countermove was deeper, leveraging the very laws he had broken to protect himself from the consequences of a failed marriage. He was blindsided by the type of fight I brought. I didn't fight him on the emotional terrain of our marriage. I fought him on the cold, hard ground of corporate law, using the evidence he'd planted. The aftermath wasn't swift or clean. His collapse was literal in the moment, but it became metaphorical too. The corporate espionage charge elevated everything. The divorce became secondary to the criminal investigation that was now initiated, the civil suit for damages becoming potentially massive. His high-powered lawyer scrambled, but the evidence was concrete. He couldn't talk his way out of hidden cameras and transmission logs. The legal battles were long, draining, and public. The details of the surveillance, the betrayal, aired out for everyone to see. It was humiliating, painful. There were moments I felt raw, exposed. But there was also a quiet strength that came from facing it head-on. He faced the consequences. Significant fines, a criminal record that destroyed his career, and a civil judgment that stripped him of assets. He never admitted remorse to me. His apologies, when they came through lawyers, felt performative, focused on reducing his sentence, not acknowledging the depth of the wound he inflicted. My business survived, but it was forever changed. We implemented rigorous security protocols. The team that stayed grew closer, bound by the shared trauma and recovery. We rebuilt, slowly, deliberately. The financial cost was immense, the human cost even higher. The trust, once broken, is a fragile thing. Healing was a process, like rebuilding a shattered house. There were days the anger consumed me, days the sadness felt like a physical weight. Therapy helped. Focusing on my work, on rebuilding, on the people who stood by me, helped more. The house, the one filled with hidden eyes, felt tainted. I sold it, started fresh. I learned that betrayal isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, insidious, hidden behind a smile. I learned that the person you think you know best can be a stranger capable of unimaginable things. And I learned that strength isn't just about fighting back. It's about choosing the right weapon, using the enemy's own tools against them in a way they never see coming. It's about turning devastation into determination. The scars remain, invisible but real. The memory of those hidden cameras still sends a shiver down my spine sometimes. But the fear is gone, replaced by resilience. By a quiet confidence born from surviving the storm he created and emerging, battered but unbroken. He sought to dismantle my life with secrets. I rebuilt it with truth, evidence, and the unforgiving power of the law. He collapsed under the weight of his own making. I stood tall, weighted by the truth, but finally, truly, free. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.